Welcome to the afternoon slump, my friends. Yeah, lessons learned. We'll have some breaks in the afternoon next year because we know everyone's getting tired, but we're almost there. We got a few more great talks. Up next here is James Dayuff. Real quick before I bring him up, Dayuff. I did not ask, just assumed. He was actually one of the original folks that had this idea back in November of last year, whenever that was. Time is foggy. It's like, hey, and he got together, and then he had a third kid, and it was like, no. And I get that. I respect that. With 2 kids at home, I get the third. Sometimes you got to step away. But a few months ago, he pinged saying, hey, do you have any slots? Do you need some help? I said, yes, actually. How about you come up on stage and talk with us? So he has rejoined us, and I hope he is here to stay as much as he can to continue on this journey in future years. Without further ado, second time today I've not got that word right. Without further ado, here's James Dayuff.
Thank you for that introduction, Josh. True to what he said, as a TPM, I have practiced the art of saying no, which is what he was referencing. I was with them as we were brainstorming what to do for a TPM summit, but my wife was in the 3rd trimester expecting our 3rd kid, and I had to say, as exciting as this sounds, I cannot be involved. So I am grateful that I'm here today to be able to rejoin the efforts to make this conference great. And just so all of you know, and maybe you'll identify with this, I've met a lot of really smart and talented people since I've been here. And as I'm standing on this stage, I have to tell you, I have a feeling of imposter syndrome. So if you've ever felt imposter syndrome and have struggled through it, just know I'm right there with you, especially right now, knowing that I'm standing in front and sharing the things I've experienced and learned, and hopefully you can learn some great things from it. So without saying anything else, let's go ahead and jump in. So hi everybody, once again, my name is James, and I'm here today to talk to you about TPM Craftsmanship. This is a framework that I developed for myself over the course of my career, and it's the framework that I frankly wish I knew earlier in my TPM journey. Some people have asked me what I'm talking about today, and the best way to describe it is that I've created this presentation directed at myself 4 or 5 years ago. So my old self would appreciate this, and hopefully you do too. But first, I want to tell you about my grandpa. As a kid, I was fascinated by my grandpa's woodworking mastery. At age 8, we built a simple box together. He did most of the work, but he let me etch a Roadrunner into the lid, and I thought that was pretty cool. He knew the tools, the techniques, and the nuances of different types of wood. His expertise was awe-inspiring to me. And this early exposure to the beauty of craftsmanship really sparked a lifelong desire for mastery. And it influenced my career trajectory in surprising ways. What I have up here, the top 2 pictures are things that he created. The bottom 2 are things that I've created, which are not nearly as impressive. But woodworking kind of runs through my family. So back to me. I'm James Dayuff. I'm a senior technical program manager at HashiCorp. I'm based out of Houston, Texas, and I enjoy spending time with my wife and my 3 kids. That pretty much takes up all of my time outside of my normal 9 to 5. I'm here to share with you, again, a model for TPM skill growth that evolved me from an aimless beginner to a purpose-driven expert. Like I said, I grew up in Houston, and I never had a really good grasp on what I wanted to do with my life. I was definitely not a tech prodigy or anything like that. And at one point, I wanted to be a building architect, but that infatuation didn't last very long. I eventually majored in management of information systems. Why? Well, the program offered a very high probability of job placement after school. that was my main objective of going to school, was to get a job. So it was very pragmatic of me to make that choice. While I was at school, I had a variety of on-campus jobs which were in the vein of information systems management. And I looked at these jobs as mini experiments. I was a QA analyst, a web developer, a database research analyst, an IT project manager, just a variety of things, and I wanted to sample as much as I could. These experiences provided a really simple foundation for my technical versatility and breadth of knowledge. After college, I went to Goldman Sachs and I focused on automation engineering. I naturally grew into the team role of coordinating lots of complex dependencies that mixed with other teams. I then jumped to ExxonMobil, where I held many different roles, from support engineer, web developer, API engineer, and product manager. Across each team, I noticed a trend of me naturally growing into that go-to guy for coordinating technical complexities across many projects. Ultimately, I had this long trail of experiences, never with the formal title of TPM, but as I look back, I was doing that job very regularly. At ExxonMobil, there came a point where I was dissatisfied and just frankly kind of burnt out. I spent a whole year searching for a new role and a new company that would give me the opportunity to strive for mastery and to become an expert at something that I loved. That's when I discovered that some of the tech companies had a formal role of a technical program manager. It wasn't smooth sailing to land a job. There was lots of rejection, but I finally landed a TPM role at Twitter. The job fit like a glove. And it turned out that I had been doing the role of a TPM a lot longer than I thought. It aligned with my strengths and aspirations, but I still had a long path of growth ahead of me. As we all know, the TPM roles demand a blend of soft and hard skills. So I desired mastery in the TPM role. So I thought to myself, how do I focus my growth across such a diverse set of skills as a TPM? As I spent more time in the role, I created this framework for myself that gave me focused discipline for skill growth. This framework centers on 3 pillars. The first is influential leadership, and then program management excellence, and then technical versatility. This framework became my compass for traveling down the TPM path of craftsmanship, striving to achieve mastery. I thought back to my grandpa and his woodworking mastery, and this is a way that I've kind of connected with him even at this point. Now, before we jump into the pillars, we need to first make sure we understand the problem that TPMs are hired to solve. Let's consider this common phrase: ideas are cheap, execution is everything. This is a quote from John Doerr in his book, Measure What Matters. The essence of the quote is to emphasize that having great ideas is just the starting point. The real value comes from executing on that idea. And you know what? TPMs are at the heart of execution. Now, don't get me wrong, other roles can drive execution. So where does that leave TPMs? How do they fit in? There's a specific type of execution that TPMs solve for: scaled execution of strategically important initiatives. A single team executing a project consisting of maybe 3 to 8 people may be able to manage that project all on their own. But what exactly happens when you have 10 to 20 teams all contributing to the project or program? Complexity increases exponentially, yet the expectation from maybe executive teams and senior leadership, the expectation to execute together and in harmony with each other remains the same. This is scaled execution. And then you add on the layer that thing you're executing on is strategically important, and suddenly the TPM hotline is ringing off the hook. Now let's get back to these pillars. The TPM craft and its pillars is the antidote to the headaches that come with scaled execution. Regardless of formal title, this skill set represents the tools to solve the problems of scaled execution. Let's start with the central pillar, program management excellence. Program management excellence in the context of a technical program manager goes beyond mere project completion. Rather, it focuses on delivering outcomes or value. A TPM is the guide through the program lifecycle from kickoff to closure. And as a TPM, you do a lot of things. You drive strategic alignment with organizational objectives. You proactively manage risk. You monitor complex dependencies. You maintain effective stakeholder communication. And you drive complex decisions with multiple teams and organizations. Now let's consider one example of a skill that would fit into the program management pillar, an illustration, you could say. Planning. While I was at Twitter, there existed a subset product of Twitter called MoPub. Some of you may have heard it, but to make a long story short, all you need to know for this is that Twitter decided to divest or sell this part of the company. The requirements and timelines for the deal were strict. We had to execute like a well-oiled machine in order to reach those objectives. And really, we had to shut down some of the tech, transfer other parts of the tech stack, preserve parts of the data for compliance reasons, and a whole other host of complex things. I was able to step in as a TPM to create a structured path of execution. Partnering with engineering, we worked backwards from the deal closure date. And I pulled in all sorts of non-engineering stakeholders to make sure that we were accounting for all those other edge cases that needed to be taken care of. Eventually, we identified all key milestones and the appropriate pacing of execution so that we could not only be successful, but also have early signaling if we were off track. I'm happy to report we successfully executed on that initiative, met all the timelines for the M&A deal. This was in large part due to this central pillar of program management excellence. Program management is at the core of the TPM skill set. I would argue that this is your core competency. The other skills, influential leadership and technical versatility, amplify this core competency in the context that you're working. Build up your TPM muscles here first, and you're off to a great start to being a TPM. So let's look at this next supporting pillar, influential leadership. Influential leadership is not about positional power. It's about inspiring and guiding cross-functional teams to accomplish objectives, even when you don't have direct authority over them, or we should say, especially when you don't have direct authority over them. This involves a blend of communication skills, strategic thinking, and the ability to persuade others. Now, I think Ted Lasso's been mentioned at least one time, maybe more times. But if you've seen it, you'll know why he's up here. He is the epitome of influential leadership. Through his leadership, he led a dysfunctional team to become united. They go from a low-performing team full of individual, single, wannabe stars to a high-performing unit that outcompetes nearly every other team in the league. Now let's dig into one example, not dealing with Ted Lasso, of a skill that fits within the framework of influential leadership. And that is negotiation. Now that can be a harsh term. Some people think that means that you need to really find a way to win and somebody else loses. In reality, it's finding a win-win. While I was at ExxonMobil, I was an informal technical product manager. They didn't really have that title, but that was what I was doing, so I'm going to take it. I was responsible for an entire API portfolio serving over 1 million requests per day. Compared to some large tech companies, 1 million requests per day really isn't that much. But for ExxonMobil at the time, APIs were a revolutionary way to retrieve data. And our internal list of customers continued to climb as our portfolio of APIs demonstrated a unique capability that was needed across much of the company. We began to get one-off requests from various teams and customers for a unique feature that would make individual experiences better for those teams. However, as we looked at the portfolio of APIs and those requests, it didn't really make sense to implement exactly what they were looking for because it would have a negative impact on all the other teams consuming the APIs. This is where negotiation came in. As a leader, I worked hard to find a win-win through careful negotiations and modifications to their feature requests. My goal was to turn it into a partnership rather than a power struggle between our team and theirs. This proved successful multiple times as we found alternative ways to implement their requested features to get their desired outcomes. Now, without nurturing your leadership capabilities as a TPM, the scope of your impact will constantly be limited. Leadership expands the scope of opportunities available to you as a TPM. Now let's jump over to the other pillar that supports the craft of TPM. Technical versatility. Now what does this mean? It is the ability to adapt and provide value across a wide range of technical domains and challenges. This versatility really allows you to speak the language of engineers, make informed decisions, and mitigate risks effectively. Let's consider another illustrative example of what technical versatility looks like applied in an actual program. Think about architecture. Let's go back to another story when I was at Twitter and I was running an important data privacy program. The objective was to uplevel the entire data stack, or tech stack, wherever emails or phone numbers flowed through the system. Now, can you imagine? Every single surface a phone number appeared, was stored, or even thought about. Tracking down these dependencies was tough. We used a mix of technical systems such as Datadog to track those dependencies, but there was lots of edge cases that we discovered that were not logged there. So we had to do those. It turned into a treasure hunt, essentially, working with several organizations across the company. No single team owned a comprehensive architecture of how phone numbers and emails flowed through the tech stack. And that's when I came in. By working across all the impacted teams, I created a comprehensive architectural diagram that visualized that data flow, from data capture to transformation to storage and all types of downstream data processing. Now, your technical versatility as a TPM is really a catalyst, and it's an amplification of every other aspect of you being a TPM in the software space. Now, what you'll notice as you work on those three pillars, you will build a foundation of trust. And really, trust is the secret ingredient to any successful initiative. Stephen Covey, in his book, The Speed of Trust, explains the importance of trust when it comes to execution. He explains that high trust organizations lead to a low cost of operations and high speed of execution. This is a trust dividend. It's the amplification of value because trust is so high in an organization. Low trust, on the other hand, low trust organizations, they lead to high operational cost and low speed of execution. This is a trust tax. It can dampen the value because trust is low. You can increase your personal trust with stakeholders through two major avenues: by displaying your character and your competence. Your leadership abilities allow you to display your authentic character, as well as your competency to lead, while program management excellence and technical versatility allow you to showcase that competency. Growing your skill set in these pillars really will boost the trust others have in you, leading to more successful outcomes. Now, we can't go into trust deeper at this time, but just know it is a force multiplier in your quest to master the ability of scaled execution of strategically important initiatives. Now, I still have a lot to work on with my journey towards mastery, but I will argue that a true practitioner enjoys the journey towards mastery and not just the end state. Now, if you enjoyed these 3 pillar concepts of TPM mastery and craftsmanship, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I regularly share insights and my own experiences through this framework and model. Or you can sign up for my newsletter for more in-depth articles and resources. Really, I just like to write, and these are great avenues for me to get that out there. So together, I invite you to join me in crafting our path towards mastery in the TPM role. Thank you. Any questions, comments, emotional outbursts? We got a question right over there.
Yeah, hi. In a decentralized organization that we were speaking about earlier, assuming a TPM reports to an engineering lead, what do you think from the competency standpoint, because you were saying program management skills is in the center of everything from your standpoint, right? How does it change, or it doesn't, in your opinion, when the leadership is different? Because doesn't the technical versatility take a bigger precedence when you're reporting to engineering leadership? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so you're asking, when it's decentralized and when you're reporting directly to engineering, how does that impact the emphasis that's placed on the pillars? It's not, oh, there we go. If we can get back to the pillars here. How does it influence the balance between program management and technical versatility, right? Okay. I would still argue that program management takes the place as the priority core competency, although technical versatility may be amplified, right? The technical program manager would still be relied on to help determine the who and the when and drive that execution and have those program management skills to make stuff happen, right? The technical versatility is a demonstration of your ability to dive deep with engineering, be curious, and to ask questions, mitigate risk, but it all kind of goes back to your ability to drive and make progress in the realm of a technical domain. So yes, if you're reporting to engineering, that may be emphasized more and maybe a much greater need, but I would still argue technical program management would remain the core competency. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool, good question. Any other questions? All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody.